This conference will now be recorded.
And go.
All right. Hey guys, it's our happy hour. I hope you guys are enjoying the drinks and food that I virtually sent each one of you. I don't have to worry about you guys drinking and driving, I don't think. Oh, there you go, bagel. I wanted to, this is kind of an open kind of question thing. A lot of people have some concerns about, obviously, about what's going on. There's some major conflicts going on with forbearance agreements and the CARES Act. And there's some misnomers out there about going after deals, which I'd like to address also. There are a couple things that I thought were important. And then, as we go along, anybody can ask questions. I would only ask that if you're not speaking, you put it on mute. Otherwise, we get echo, 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 echo. Does that make sense, Jeff King?
Yes, it does. If I can figure that out.
You put it on mute,
Oh,
not your video.
wrong thing.
I want to see your pretty face.
No,
There you go. He'll figure it out. So anyway, Jeff, I'm going to try to figure out how to share my screen. Let's see. I'm used to the other program, not this one. Let's see where share screen is. All right. Jeff, where would I see share screen on go to meeting?
I'll make you the presenter, and then you'll
That
see
would
it
be
down
helpful.
next to your mic and camera.
That's wonderful. Okay. So I'm going to try to share the screen. There we go. And I'll put up some little slides that we made very quickly. Let's see if I can do this. Slide. All right, let me go back. This is very exciting. So this is obviously Tuesdays with the teams. Normally we don't have a presentation. We may have someone speak, but since you guys are all going to have the same questions or concerns, I'd lay out 4 kind of topics that have been really, really hot topics over the last week. And then we'll open up the floor. Anybody wants to ask questions, it's free until drinks run out. So you've got myself, Cindy, Greg, probably a lot of experts that have multifamily on here. You've got an insurance expert and infinite banking expert, and I can't see everybody because now I'm down to 3 people. Jeff, you don't see the pictures in my screen, do you? Just the slide, right?
Just the slides, yes.
Perfect. So the first slide, and I'm just going to cover these slides quickly, and then we can go away from the slides. I just wanted to show you the hard work that myself and Rob put into it. So we thought we would I did these at the last second. We thought we'd come up with something neat called Covidisms. It's the act of something related to COVID-19. So we made a little spin wheel really to talk about forbearance agreements, evictions, or lack thereof, I should say, and the CARES Act. And then towards the end, talk about opportunities and what you should or shouldn't have in an LOI. Because guys, there are opportunities out there right now. We're actually seeing some very interesting opportunities. So there are a lot of naysayers out there, but we're seeing opportunities, and we're seeing investors asking if we're going to go after opportunities, which is kind of contrary to what most people think. But if we're seeing it, I imagine some of you guys are seeing it as well. So let me get through here. Just first, we've had a lot of people ask for the stress test that I showed on one of the Zoom webinars I did, and honestly, I stole it from James Ng. I don't have any problem telling people if I copied something. So I took his stress test, modified a little bit, but it's not that hard. It's your monthly income, less your expenses, less your mortgage payment, what do you have left? And so I just put this up here again to remind everybody that you should be doing a stress test every 2 weeks on your properties, okay? Because things are changing, and you want to be doing the stress test. In this particular example, we did our stress test at, well, it's just an example, but I did the stress test at a 40% reduction in economic occupancy. So in other words, 60% economic occupancy. And And so what is my cash flow at the very bottom, my property balance sheet for cash? What does that look like if, you know, this continues? And quite honestly, it looks like it will continue for quite a while with respect to property managers. Please mute if you're not speaking. So it shows what it would look like in April, May, and June. So that's just to remind you guys, and we can provide, if you shoot us an email at team@kaliserlaw.com or PM one of us, happy to send you a spreadsheet. It's not that complicated, it's just plug and play, you pop in the numbers, but you really need to be doing this regularly so that you can see the trend and see if you need to take different actions. So Covidism number one, the CARES Act. And so I define Covidism number one, the CARES Act, as the act of caring for everyone except property owners. Yes, you guys know I'm a smartass, but it seems like everybody is being bailed out, and now the lenders are being bailed out as of the announcement today, or the services are being bailed out. So everybody's getting bailed out except the owners of properties. And so I'm going to talk about real quick just some, I know it's happy hour and we're all going to talk, but you guys probably want to hear some of this information before you ask questions. But we've had a lot of people talk about, not a lot of people, we've had quite a few clients going in and entering into forbearance agreements. And you guys have heard me say, I don't recommend that be the first choice if your stress test is not looking too good. I still believe the first choice should be a capital call or an infusion of a loan from a manager or member. Relatively speaking, a lot of you have, or a lot of us have 50 to 100 or more investors. And if you're trying to just forbear $150,000 for 3 months, 100 investors and $150,000, that's not that much. That's $1,500 per investor for a capital call. The issue is, and I'm going to talk about it in a few minutes, forbearance agreements are jumping way down the line when it comes to how close are you getting to a foreclosure or a due on sale provision, or worst case, a bankruptcy. So when we talk about forbearance agreements, I'll get to that. But so the CARES Act actually comes into play with the forbearance agreement. So most of you guys know that, and I guess I'll combine the two. Most of you people know that the forbearance agreement, if you enter into one that's a Freddie or Fannie or HUD, you know, you're foreborn from having to pay typically the following 90 days worth of PITI. And in exchange for that, you're not allowed to, and make sure you guys understand the differences here. You're not allowed to evict somebody who can't pay rent because of COVID-19, okay? If they can't pay rent or they do something other than COVID-19, the forbearance agreement doesn't apply to them. It's very specific. I've gone through several forbearance agreements already that are Freddie and Fannie. And then on day 91, you're going to take the presumably 3 months worth of payments you didn't make, and they're going to divide those up into 12ths. So on month 4, you're going to pay your normal PITI plus 1/12 of the 3 months of payments you didn't make. So obviously you're going to have about a 25% higher PITI for month 4. So that means your payment's going to be higher. So if you're going to do that, you need to factor that in to your stress test. When you're doing a stress test, you need to factor that in. So it's not that bad because you have a 90-day forbearance agreement and it's only for COVID related, but after that, you know, you can evict, right? Wrong. You have the CARES Act. So the CARES Act actually trumps the provisions in your forbearance agreement if it's a forbearance agreement that is a Fannie, Freddie, HUD, VA, one of those type of agreements. The CARES Act specifically states that anybody that has a federally backed loan, which is a Fannie, Freddie, HUD, or VA loan, and it even goes out to extend to anybody who has a tenant that is on Section 8, which is a federal subsidy, is governed by this act. So the CARES Act is 120-day forbearance from the initiation of the CARES Act. And I can give you guys a memo. Anybody wants the memo? I posted it earlier in the week or last week. that kind of outline a scenario that we've seen several times. But so you have 120 days from March 27th where you cannot evict. And here's the kicker: you cannot evict anyone for non-payment, whether it was COVID related or not. So if they have a job and they decide not to pay, you can't evict them, because that loan is a Freddie, Fannie, HUD, or VA loan, or if there's another federally backed loan, it would be qualified under that. So number one, you can't evict them, and I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I believe you can't even start the eviction process till July 25th. Okay, that's 120 days. July 25th is a Saturday, so you're not going to give them notice on a Saturday. So you can't give them notice until Monday, which is July 27th. The act goes even further, and it says not only can you not evict, you have to give them 30 days advance notice after the 120-day period before you can evict them. So the very earliest any landlord or owner that has a loan that is a Freddie, Fannie, HUD, VA, whatever, can actually evict would be 30 days following July 27th, which comes out to be August 25th. So what I've been trying to tell people, and I've done this for like a month and a half now, you know, the forbearance agreements can really, really, really get you guys into trouble if you don't pay attention to what you're doing. The forbearance agreement, obviously you have a 90-day grace period to make your payments, but on day 91, you have 125% of your normal rent payment due for the next 12 months. If you default in a forbearance agreement, you're SOL. Depending on how much pressure is on the bank, you've waived all your notice requirements. The bank can instantly, well, they have to under state law, notice you to foreclosure. They don't have to enter into another forbearance agreement with you. Okay, so the reason I bring this up is, while you're worried about your forbearance agreement and you're trying to stabilize your property, knowing that you still can't evict people, the CARES Act makes it so that you can't evict people for literally another 60 days beyond into your forbearance agreement. So even if you made it by all the timelines in the CARES Act and you noticed the tenant to be evicted on, let's say, August 25th, you have to think practically. So I don't know, I mean, the number's like 14 million renters are under a federally insured loan in the United States when it comes to multifamily. So you will not be the only entity or landlord trying to evict a handful, hopefully not more, of tenants on August 25th, which means it's going to be up to a judge and his or her docket as to how quickly that happens. So more likely than not, you're in mid-September. I'm honestly thinking best case scenario, because the courts have frozen everything that's going on right now. So there's going to be a massive backlog, and then you're going to have a huge thrust of landlords trying to get rid of tenants. So if you guys think about this, you could end up with 5, 10, 15, it depends on, you know, how much the tenants know or don't know, not paying rent for April, May, June, July, August, September. Okay, that's 6 months. And if you have a certain number of people not paying rent for 6 months, the last 3 months of which you've got to have increased mortgage payments, you can run in, excuse my French, but some super shit. Shit just means super high intensity training. Doesn't mean the bad word, but I'm just kidding. But you can run into some serious problems there. You can run into problems where you can't pay your debts as they become due, which makes you technically insolvent. And that creates a whole nother issue. And then you're either talking to me or restructuring or bankruptcy counsel to see what you can do to try to save some of your investors' equity. So that's why I hope everybody's drinking. It wasn't to bring anybody down, but there are a lot of property management companies. Here's where the issue came up. There are a lot of property management companies that we all third party out that aren't sure whether they can actually evict somebody or not evict somebody right now. And it's very important that you guys as owners, and even if you're investors or key persons or guarantors, you know, bad boy, bad girl guarantors, however it's structured in your deal, you guys need to make sure that your property management company is on point and they understand what they can and can't do, and that they understand that if you have a federally backed or insured loan, that has different restrictions on it. And I'm telling you guys this because a significantly large property management company didn't know this. So don't make assumptions, number one. So that was Covidism 1, and that was actually 2, but I'll read what I put for 2. Evictions, the act of not evicting because Covidism 1 will not allow it. I was trying to be funny. I just kind of explained to you why, you know, evictions, you would think when people don't pay rent, you could evict, but they've enacted the CARES Act again, which has helped everybody but us as owners. And I refer to myself as an owner because we have multifamily and single family as well. So then it brings you to, how did I miss 3? Hold on, I'm going back. Let's say 3. Covidism number 3. No, she's not one of our employees. Forbearance, the act of owners saving, of an owner saving his arse. That's not a typo. Arse is like ass, but it's down under. When Covidisms number 1 and number 2 are in effect. So the point being was, forbearance should still be your last resort. And I know I sound like Chicken Little saying the sky is falling, the sky is falling. And I know many of you have already entered into forbearance agreements, which is why I'm stressing, please, please, please make sure that you are doing the stress test every 2 weeks, especially if you are in a forbearance agreement. If your property management company has applied for PPP, and if they've already received it, you need to know right now. And if so, they should be deducting the payroll that you would normally pay. That will definitely help you out with any lost revenue. There was not a whole lot of lost revenue in some polling we did for March. I would expect April to look a little different, just FYI, as more jobs are lost and as people receive their checks and buy flat screen TVs. I don't think everybody's going to be using their rent checks for what they should be doing, but that's me because I'm a pessimist and not an optimist when it comes to that. But forbearance agreements, I'm not gonna go into detail on them. You guys know what they are. Highly recommend that to the extent you enter into one or you're entertaining one, please talk to a lawyer or law firm that is well versed in securities, corporate financials, and your PPM docs. I highly recommend that. You have options. You have the ability to do a capital call. You can't make it mandatory in most of your agreements, but you do have the ability to do a capital call. So I would highly recommend that you exercise that option, or you do a unsecured loan as a member or a manager to the entity that typically won't violate your loan docs. And then if that doesn't work, then forbearance is obviously your last call. But don't put yourself in a position where you now know that you can't evict bad apples or people that can't pay for 6 months, because you're already starting out with lower rents than you want. And inevitably, you get tenants that won't pay, especially in the economic conditions we're in, and you get tenants that will take advantage of it. It's just unfortunately, the nature of the business. And so you don't want to set yourself up for failure. And then I'm going to shut up in a minute and let you guys talk and drink. Covidism number 4, an LOI. I think everybody out here knows what an LOI is. It's a letter of intent. It's the act of going after an asset that has been adversely affected by Covidisms 1, 2, and 3, thereby forcing a sale. As you guys can see, I'm kind of going full circle. You go through 1, you go through 2, you go through 3. If 1, 2, and 3 don't work, then we're buying your property. Not me, but investors or somebody or the bank is going to take back your property. So I talked about letter of intents real briefly. It's surprising. It's actually encouraging, I should say. I've had 4 people in the last 3 days ask to prepare a letter of intents for them right now, which is very encouraging. We're actually moving forward on 2 properties as well that we had looked at pre-COVID, and we're actually going to go after them now. We may get a little bit of a discount on them too. I have a great pain in the ass COVID provision that I have drafted for myself. It's a Merrill special COVID provision that we're happy to share with those that are that want us to look over their LOI. It is designed to really protect you as much as you possibly can be protected, and give you numerous outs and extensions in the event, unfortunately, that, let's say, the pandemic increases in areas that they try to lift the shelter in. And so if it gets put back into a state of emergency, the COVID-19 provisions that we've built in would take into effect, and it would kind of toll all of the dates. So doesn't mean it's going to be easy to negotiate, but I can tell you, and Cindy and Greg can tell you right now, that sellers are being more flexible than you can imagine on many of the deals right now. They're actually more nervous than buyers, not necessarily for the same reasons. And I'm just going to throw this out there right now. You know, we're working on putting together something to go after deep discounted funds, deep discounted assets, but we're not there yet. This has to work its way through. There are going to be numerous assets on the market in the next 3 to 6 months at discounted prices, either from the owner or from the banks, because of bridge loans. We're already seeing bridge loan issues. Greg and I are working on a bridge loan issue right now. And the difference between bridge loans and Fannie and Freddie, the bridge lenders aren't negotiating. They're really not that interested in doing a forbearance agreement. Some of you may have some different experience, but they don't have the same flexibility. And bridge lenders, I hate to say this, are like hard money lenders, which is what I used to do in a former life. Some of you guys remember that. You lend on a property with the expectation that you may have to take it back. So you've already underwritten the property that you may take it back. And so going into that loan, typically you're okay knowing you have to take it back. Now, not every bridge lender is in that position, but we're clearly seeing a lot less flexibility with bridge lenders. People and I know not everybody here is from Texas, but people in Dallas and Houston are saved right now that are in that situation because there are no foreclosures going on right now. They've been stayed. I think they're stayed for May, but I'm not 100% sure. But even if they haven't been stayed, there have been very little postings for May, so most people are okay right now. But keep in mind, if you're wanting to go after assets, these type of assets are going to be available in the next 3 to 6 months. Think about all the bridge loans that have been done over the last 2 to 3 years. Most bridge loans are at 3 years, and they have to have a certain debt service coverage ratio, and a significant portion of property owners that got bridge loans anticipated on flipping them relatively quick because of the cap rate compression, and not necessarily because of their property management or asset management skills. I'm not saying all the people, I'm not even saying a majority of the people, but there are opportunities that are out there. And then there are just regular opportunities with people, with sellers that were getting ready to either do a supplement, or they were looking to sell their property, and now they know they're going to have to take a discount. We've seen a couple properties retrade at 12 to 15% discount lately. Now, that's 12 to 15% discount on an inflated price, and based on the software we have, we can kind of see what they've paid initially. So it's a 12 to 15% discount on a price that could have been inflated by 15%, but it was going market rate based on the cap rates. So anyway, long story short, there are opportunities out there. A few of you on this call that I can see have already talked to us about some of the opportunities. I would just be cautious. Make sure that you have, it's not even the force majeure clause, it's a specific COVID-19 clause in your LOI, which then transfers into your purchase and sale agreement, so that you can be protected, so that you're not losing hard money, or if you are, it's very little hard money up front. This is just like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when sellers were not expecting hard money and sellers expected financing contingencies. That all changed in the last 3 to 4 years. Well, many sellers are expecting not to go hard, or if you're going hard, it's relatively small. And many are anticipating having a financing contingency right now. And Cindy and I and Greg have seen numerous extensions because of I think the financing changes about every 3 hours right now. It changes more than oil, which is another sore topic I shouldn't bring up right now. But again, I want to encourage people, if they see deals and they're going to put an LOI, at least we would like to help you guys out with that provision. If not, and you've used a different lawyer, which is fine, make sure that he or she includes specific provisions that cover the timelines. And then number 5, you guys already know who we are, Kaliser Associates. So I'm going to unshare my screen and have a drink and open it up for questions to myself or Cindy and I, or maybe you guys have just thoughts or anything. I'm trying to figure out how to unshare my screen. Be nice if Jeff was here.
Yeah, just hit the screen button next to the mic and camera under screen. Just click that and it'll unshare your screen.
Yeah, it's not really there, but that's all right. That's all right. So if anybody has any questions, now, perfect. Thanks, Jeff. Now would be the time. It's open mic. Just raise your hand. You can also chat questions. If you have questions and you want to chat, I think there's some questions in the chat box, Cindy. I see like 9.
Chat.
I'm not seeing any questions.
Okay.
Hi, you all. Can you hear me?
Yep.
This is Margie. I don't see the chat, so I'm just going to ask, how bad would the cash call, how bad would the consequences be on a cash call if you don't participate, or if you participate for less than what they're asking?
So that's a good question. I assume everybody understood the question. So if you're so I think you're asking, as an investor in a deal, if you're a manager and you do a cash call, let's say you want to avoid forbearance agreement, you want to do a cash call. At least of the people that we represent, I would say about 90% of the PPMs and the operating agreements do not have mandatory cash calls. Would that be fair, Cindy and Greg?
Yes.
Yeah. So more likely than not, the PPM agreement's not going to require it. So you won't have to make a cash call, but if you don't make a cash call, your interest could be diluted slightly. I mean, if people are raising $150,000 on an initial capital raise of $3 million, $4 million, it's going to be very minor. You can't be forced into a cash call if it's not mandatory on your company agreement, but you could.
I think she's asking as a lead, how bad would it look if you didn't do it?
That wasn't the question.
Can you repeat what you said?
Sure. I'm asking the consequences. How severe are the consequences of not contributing to cash call or not participating in cash call?
Okay, so someone needs to mute their phone. But so the consequences, you're most likely going to have your percent diluted a small percent if you don't make the cash call. They can't terminate you unless there's a mandatory cash call provision that has specific restrictions in the company agreement, which very rarely do these type of investments. Everybody that's on this call, rarely do we see those type of onerous provisions in a company agreement. So the consequences are really more towards the group as a whole, the fund as a whole, by not raising enough capital. It may force the the management into entering into a forbearance agreement. But an investor specifically, without looking at the company agreement, it's hard to make an exact answer to that. But generally, you're not going to get yourself into trouble. But you could have your interest slightly diluted by the percent of new capital that's been brought in, because everybody else will have a little higher percent of ownership, and yours will decrease a little bit because you didn't add more capital to it.
Understood. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, Merrill, this is Charlie Mohachi. I don't know why it says Christina, but it's Charlie.
That's all right.
Along the same line, if you have your IRA invested and there is a mandatory capital call, and you have no more money in your IRA, how does that affect you? I guess then you're just SOL?
Well, okay, so it won't, again, it's not going to negatively affect you. What happens is, I'm just throwing numbers out. Let's say your IRA as an investor was 1.5% of the capital, and then everybody else put in whatever the number is, 3 grand, 5 grand, whatever the number is. You haven't necessarily lost anything, but what happens is your interest may drop to 1.4%, and everybody else's increases by 0.1% or whatever the number. So you're not SOL. You might be able to, depending on the company agreement, you might be able to be admitted as an additional member if you really wanted to for that $5,000 raise. That's where Greg comes in and actually reads the fine print and all the various company agreements. He's smiling. But I wouldn't say you're SOL at all. Again, I think worst case scenario, you're diluted slightly. It's not, I don't see deals. We haven't seen deals where people are asking for $1 million or $2 million or $3 million in cash calls. If that were the case, my gut tells me that a lot of the investors would say no. But here's what happens, guys. If you're in forbearance agreement and you guys and the manager can't make the forbearance payments and then makes a capital call, as investors, you guys better think very hard about what you want to do. Because if you don't add capital to that business, then it will go to foreclosure. If it goes to foreclosure, anywhere from 0 to 100% of the equity could be wiped out instantly at a foreclosure sale. If it goes to bankruptcy, the equity gets wiped out by 1, the discounted value, and 2, the bankruptcy lawyers, one of which I used to be. The fees are exorbitant. The forensic accountants that are hired for Chapter 11 are exorbitant. They're just as much, if not more, than the bankruptcy lawyers. So my advice to investors, and this is where I get into what I used to do for 12 years with a large firm, is to be cognizant of a capital call. If you're making a capital call as a last ditch resort and you've looked at the financials and it doesn't make sense, keep in mind, if you have 100 grand in there and they want a capital call for 5 and everybody says, no, I don't want to put in 5, it's possible you lose all 100 grand if it goes to foreclosure and the bank just forecloses on it for the value of the note. If the bank forecloses on it for the value of the note and then turns around and sells it for somewhere around the value of the note plus legal fees, there's not going to be anything left for you guys. The bank is not incentivized typically to sell for a profit. They're incentivized to get their money back and cover their expenses at a foreclosure sale. So that's where I would be very cautious. And I went over your question, but I don't think you're SOL at all. I think you have a slight dilution, and there may be a mechanism for you to put in cash if you want to gain that slight dilution back as just an individual.
Okay, thanks. Also, I sent you an email on about what you started the program with how property owners is getting screwed. I don't know if you know Scott Shield. He has a different a petition he's sending around about the Moratorium and Forbearance Debt Relief Act, where basically everyone during this period gets all their debt goes into automatic forbearance and there's no paperwork or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to pass.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Right, just like Omar and OAC are going to make sure everybody gets $5,500 for the next 12 months. If they've got 2 adults and a family of 3 tax-free, I'll lose half my staff if that happens. I just don't see that. I don't even think we have printing presses that can print that much money. But yeah, I know what you're talking about. Listen, I would love it if someone would just give some of the 300 and whatever $1 million that's coming back down and force tenants to pay their rent and their mortgage with the free money they're getting, but it just doesn't seem like anybody at the moment cares about us. I'm gonna have a drink to that one. Let's see. Anna says her PM got it. Yeah, and Anna, sorry, had stated that I think we were talking about PPPs, the loans, which is a sensitive spot for me personally because I have 3 companies and I filed all 3 and all 3 got approved and only one made it in time for funding. So I'm watching and applauding that the Senate passed the first version about 45 minutes ago, and we're going to wait for the House to see if no one stalls and gets passed on Thursday. The plus side is that our lender, within about 30 seconds of it passing, said, I just want to reiterate, you've already been approved. You're first in line in our bank. You're going to get your money. It's just whenever they pass it on Thursday or Friday. So, and this is a smaller bank. B of A wouldn't give 2 shits about me, or many people. But Anna was posting about the PM getting it. The PM getting it is a huge deal. Listen, it changes our stress test. I went back and changed our stress test. If you think about it, I think on some of our smaller deals, the PM runs about 23,000 a month for payroll. And that's typically most people's property management agreement is you're paying 3 to 4% or 2.5 to 4% of rent collected, and then you're covering the payroll expense. And so if your property management company applied for the PPP and it covered their employees, because technically it's still their employees, you get a reduction, or you don't have to pay that payroll expense. So I'm just going to use easy numbers. Let's say your average rent is $1,000 a month. If your average rent is $1,000 a month, you've just decreased your payroll, at least for 2 months, because it typically covers 8 weeks. You've decreased your payroll for, let's say, May and June, your payroll expense. So you've got some cushion. I mean, if your stress test was X, now you could, in theory, lose another 20 paying tenants for the next 2 months, and it wouldn't change your stress test. Or rather than me being pessimistic, be optimistic, and now your LOI is much better because you didn't lose any paying tenants during those 2 months, but essentially you curbed your expenses by 20, 25 grand. So it's a big deal, and I did the happy dance about the same time Anna did, because any news is good news. I don't think the government intended for that to benefit us, but I really don't care at this point. I'm not, whatever it is, Shake Shack that's taken $10 million, and I have 85 million in cash reserves in my public statements. You guys already saw a post I did about that. I was a little annoyed by it. Senate passes 480 for small business. Yes, Sandhya, it's very exciting. Let's see what the House does. Let's see what the House sticks in there, but it looks like it's going to move pretty quickly. I'm just calling people out, reply in private. Okay. I won't call anybody. I won't mention the question. If you have a question, you want me to reply in private, put reply in private. Kevin, it's okay if I ask your question? Kevin may be sleeping now. Kevin asked, once the operating capital is exhausted, do you think the lender will push back on using money in reserve for CapEx to operate the property? 100%. I have no doubt. Listen, guys, when you go into forbearance or default, I promise you, the lender is not your friend. I used to represent lenders in Enron, WorldCom, Blockbuster, Kmart, and about 14 oil and gas bankruptcies. I promise you, the lender is not your friend. The lender doesn't care about you. They care about the assets. You go into forbearance agreement, you have cash collateral, not cash collateral, you have cash accounts or sweep accounts. You can't, just so we're clear, when you guys go into forbearance, until that money's paid off, you cannot make a distribution to anybody. Okay, so be cognizant. And you go into forbearance agreement, I've already heard this from a couple people already, it's going to hinder some people's ability to go and get another deal done with the same lender or the same agency. You know, you're not going to be on the special servicing list, but I guarantee you when they go to pre-approve you and they look you up and they see you've got 1, 2, or 3 loans in forbearance agreement, you're not going to be the rock star that they're looking for. Now, they may still approve a loan, but they may approve a loan with 18 months of PITI in reserve up front, which for most of us kills the deal. It's hard to give I'm going to be conservative, a 6 to 8% return on capital when you've got $1.2 million or $1.3 million sitting upstairs for no reason. Well, no reason from my opinion, big reason from the lender's opinion. I would absolutely, I can tell you that the lender probably has the right to go into any reserve account they have. It's in their possession per the loan docs. Will they? That'll be up to a discussion between you and the lender, but the lender will go into reserve account before the lender takes a loss and has to pay out of its pocket its investors. Just remember, the lenders are just like us. They have investors, and they have to pay their investors. And so, you know, again, they're not our friend when it comes to these type of situations. Let's see. Anna, can I mention your question? I can't see you, so I'm going to assume yes. Yes, thank you. It says, what terms are you seeing on PSAs now? Hard money, mortgage contingency discounts, etc. Okay, this is not my lawyer answer, so I'm going to say all of the above. I'm a lawyer, I'm verbose, I used to litigate, I can talk forever. We see all of it. We actually saw something that was very interesting. I may get Cindy to explain it because I'm not smart enough to understand it. But Cindy, I think we had a deal where, maybe I'm wrong and I misread it, where there was monies escrowed to make sure that after closing, rent collection was where it was supposed to be for a certain period of time. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Don't mention the client.
No,
Give a little detail on it. I was very impressed by that.
Yeah, so money was escrowed, and Greg, you can jump in too if I'm remembering. Was it for 90 days or a little bit longer?
I think it was for 6 months.
Yeah.
Greg, how much money was it? It was a significant amount.
It was
several $1,000.
How much?
Yeah.
Several $100,000.
Yeah, so it was, so guys, it was several $100,000 of the sales proceeds of the seller that the seller agreed to make the deal happen, to put in escrow to assure, essentially to assure that certain metrics were met as far as rent collection. So essentially, if rent, I don't know what the number was, Greg, you probably know what the number was, but if rent didn't hit a certain number, they got to draw down on the escrow, right?
Yeah, I think it was the average they received the previous 3 months before the pandemic started.
So I'm not gonna pat ourselves on the back, but Greg and Cindy helped negotiate that. And there's some, and this goes back to Anna's question. So yes, we're seeing some retraded discounts, number one, and we're seeing some properties being offered a little bit lower than the traditional cap rates. Financing contingencies seem to be popping up on almost every deal now that we've looked at.
Yes. Yeah, and also less hard money is required up front.
A lot less hard money. But yeah, and you know, listen, if I wouldn't put an LOI out there without a financing contingency. And look, the reality is, even with a financing contingency, you're going to get a quote today. I don't know if Paul's on this call. He was on the call last time because I got myself in trouble with Freddie Mac. But if Paul isn't on the call, the terms change on literally a daily basis. So what you're getting quoted at today may not look anything like 60 or 90 days from now. And that's why you really want the contingency financing contingency, because you're gonna have a better idea 45 days or 30 days, whatever the date is, than you do today. And real quick caveat, so Paul was on last time and I had posted something right before that said, and we got this from a lender's counsel, so it wasn't something I made up, that Freddie Mac was putting a freeze on its lending. And we got this from counsel on a deal, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. So I posted, hey, people, Freddie Mac is put a freeze on lending right now on their deals. So Paul's like, hey, you know, he gets on here, hey, you shouldn't really be saying that because that's not true. I said, Paul, here's the memo. And he heard it, he saw it, and then he got one of the large lenders that uses Freddie lending, who said, yeah, I don't think that's true. They explained it happened to be the small balance Freddie Mac deals, because Freddie had made an announcement, which apparently today they came back and brought it back. But any Freddie loan that defaults, they have the right to put that loan back to the small balance lender and make them buy the loan back from Freddie. That's always been in their agreements, but it's the first time Freddie had publicly said, hey, we got to do it. So the small balance lender, instead of saying, hey, we don't want to take the risk, they basically just put in an email to the buyer. We represent, I think, the seller on that deal. They put an email to the buyer saying, hey, look, Freddie said that they're putting everything on hold right now, so we're gonna have to wait 2 to 3 weeks before we can fund it. So it wasn't true. What I was very impressed was, I really didn't think I was that popular, but I got a call from general counsel of Freddie Mac the next day saying, hey, you can't be posting this on Facebook and LinkedIn. And I'm like, why are you even worried about me? But long story short, I sent them the information, and Cindy and I helped them get that resolved. So Freddie is not enforcing that. And then today they just announced that worst case scenario, Freddie and Fannie were only going to require 4 months worth of payments instead of putting the loan back right now. So that was good. Aaron Katz foreclosure. I don't know what that one's about. Let's see. So Emily, you put an email. Is that email in multifamily properties, blah, blah, blah? You put that email in. Do you want me to, that question, you want me to talk about it publicly or no? I'll let you respond. I can't tell if people are having conversations with themselves or with me. If you have a question, you can unmute yourself and ask the question. That way I won't get anybody in trouble.
Hey, Merrill.
Yes.
So we've all had a couple drinks. I'd like to hear your lawyer answer about the 4th and 5th Amendment. They raise our taxes. They tell us we can't collect rent and can't evict. Is this illegal seizure of property by the government?
Who is this?
Brian Sifford.
Oh, good God, Brian. I'm going to take the 5th on that. I think there are going to be a lot of constitutional issues that are going to come out of what has occurred over the last 6 weeks. And I'm being a lawyer and I'm being very careful what I'm saying, even after having a good scotch.
I could wait one scotch to ask the question again if you want.
Yeah, well, no, it was a tall scotch. I had a call before you guys. I started the scotch on. I needed it. I think you're going to see I think if things don't calm down very quickly, like opening up businesses, I think you're going to see some looting and rioting and some civil unrest in certain parts of the country very quickly. I think people have felt that their constitutional rights may have been violated, their state rights may have been violated. You have, and I'm not saying anything negative about our president, but who has just come out and said he can do what he wants to do, and there's an argument that he really can do what he wants to do when it comes to the health, safety, and welfare of the country. And then you had Greg Abbott, who came out and said the same thing. I don't know if any of you listened to his press release or his video press release today. I was listening to parts of it, and then it was just kind of blah, blah, blah. But he basically said the same thing. He wants to open up the country, the country of Texas. He wants to open up the state of Texas essentially for business. And then Judge Jenkins just issued a new order in Dallas County extending the shelter in till the middle of April. And so I don't know if any of you guys listened to this public announcement. It wasn't really advertised. I just happened to I can't sleep much lately. So I was looking online to see what the governor was going to say next. And they said it was happening today. So some reporter called him out and said, I don't understand. You got Judge Jenkins that just said there's a shelter-in order in Dallas County, and you're telling us that you know, you're going to institute phase 1 starting most likely on Monday, but you're going to talk about it on this Friday. And he's like, essentially, I'm the governor, and what I say goes. But kind of what Trump said. But you know, we're in talks with the various counties to see how they are working through things, but they know to work with us within the parameters we have. So anyway, Brian, that could be a 4-day discussion with constitutional laws that may or may not have been broken. I think there's going to be bigger issues with media, maybe portraying, maybe not portraying things that should or shouldn't be right. The reality is we have deaths, and anytime we have deaths with something that we can't control, it creates enormous amount of emotion, and rightfully so. I'm not taking any position on this. I try not to take a position on it, but the reality is, talking to doctors, and there are a couple doctors on here, and talking with my father, who's been a physician since 1972, they all seem to be coming to the same consensus that they believe that there are millions and millions of people that have been infected by COVID that never had symptoms that arose to the level that would have allowed them or caused them to go get tested. And so because of that, the rates may be a lot lower than people think, but as everybody says, any death is not a good death. But I think if more information comes out and you get more tests like happened in LA, or it was San Diego, wherever it was in California, that shows, hey, 4 to whatever 7% of the population that never tested is actually showing antibodies, then you're going to have people questioning, why did they shut down the country? Why did, you know, all sorts of stuff, and, you know, suing the government, which is going to be a whole different issue. The government has no money. They're printing money they don't have. So that's not good. Brian, I think the bigger question is, since we're all sitting here on real estate and worried about our rents, you know, if we start having vacancies, can we actually buy some futures of oil at negative $33 and fill up our bathtubs in some of our vacant units, and then maybe sell it in December or January when people are traveling? I mean, that's kind of what I'd like to do.
Well, thanks for your insight.
Yeah, sorry, man. I'm not getting into a constitutional discussion with you. It'll aggravate some, so it's best left alone.
Merrill, I have a question. I'm sorry I came on here a little bit late, but
That's all right.
I have a question. When we all got to notice that Dallas, I'm not too sure if this is countrywide, but that Dallas was not going to allow any evictions for the next 3 months. I mean, maybe I'm Tinkerbell here, but I was actually shocked at that, because I understand they want to help the tenants, but you know, what about the people that, you know, own the house or the apartment? I mean, they've got their stuff that they have to pay, and then you're stuck with somebody who says, even if they're able to pay, he's going to say, oh, I don't pay, I have 3 months free here. I mean, how are a lot of these leads even dealing with that? Like I said, when I read that, I felt it was so one-sided, just like, I guess it was like Shake Shack got all these millions of dollars, and of course they got embarrassed, so they gave it back. But what happened to the small business owners, which a lot of these leads are?
So real quick, who asked the question?
Ellen Sherry.
Ellen, how are you doing?
Pretty good, thank you.
Fully recovered?
Almost, yeah.
Well, you're living with your husband. I understand that you can't be fully recovered.
That's a challenge.
So I apologize because you had a very serious echo in your question. Cindy, did you hear it? The whole question? It sounded to me like
I had the echo too. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if everybody's mic is turned off when they're talking, but it sounded to me like essentially how PPP be so one-sided towards towards bigger business and not smaller business. Would that be a fair assessment of your question?
Yes.
You're really going to try to get me pissed off on this call, aren't you? So yes, I was probably the second person to post on Facebook that Shake Shack and Ruth Chris, who actually got two $10 million in PPP approvals. They have two brands, and they show also a significant sum of cash reserves in their Q1 for 2020. So I'm trying to understand. It's unfortunate. So I posted, let me make sure I have the numbers right because I'm probably going to be wrong, but 0.3% of the businesses that applied for the PPP loans got 9% of the PPP money. So poor people, poor businesses like mine, now I feel like the underdog, where, the top 5% own the country. So 0.3% got 9%. So 9% of 349 billion is, I don't know, 220. I don't know what the number is. I can't figure it out right now. I've had too much scotch. But long story short, there were 1.66 million businesses that received funding, and 0.3% of those got a significant minority of the funding. I don't know how to reconcile that. I also know that I personally know of entities that filed for it that had no employees. You're going to see an enormous amount of fraud come out of this. It's not going to happen today, unfortunately. I can tell you that I am really counting on this round passing on Thursday or Friday to get us covered. But at the end of the day, I'm shocked that the government initiated this in the first place. And I listened to Rand Paul just go on and on about today on the Senate floor about how we shouldn't pass this provision. And it's, we need to just open up the country and let business go back to normal. The reality is we open up the country, business aren't going back to normal right away. Not going to happen. So listen, the bottom line is there's some of us, Mike Du Bois on here, Rob, myself, and a couple others. We're trying to put together some sort of grassroots, I didn't want to say lobbying group because that would be an overstatement of what we're trying to do. But the reality is no one on this call has any voice whatsoever.
That's what I was thinking about. Yes.
Yeah, and so Jeff and I and Rob and Mike and a couple of others, we're trying to use some of our automation technology that Jeff's so good at, and creating, I'm going to go into detail about something that hasn't been released yet, but we're creating a deal where you basically sign into a page. It doesn't cost anybody anything, but to do a petition or a letter, you've got to show that you're a constituent of that particular representative or senator's district, because they're only going to listen.
I did get one of those letters today.
Pardon me?
I did get a letter today. I had the name of all the governors and the politicians
Right.
in Texas. It's a letter.
Right.
So what about us?
Right, but we've actually created a program that you put your address in, and we're going to try to put together very succinct letters that have at least digital signatures on it that go directly to that particular, if we can, mayor, governor, House of Representative, and senator for each individual that logs on, versus having something that's by the apartment association, National Apartment Association, that has 800 signatures and just goes straight to the top. When I believe, since I've been part of a lobbying group with my wife in the past, that when you're actually talking to your actual representative and senator, and there's more than one of you talking, they start listening. And when you tell them if you or 15 other people represent 20 or I don't know 9,000 tenants, and that if you can't survive, those tenants are going to be in serious trouble, who are all voters in their district. They're going to start to listen. So that's kind of a grassroots thing that we're trying to put together. It's honestly, it's difficult with all the things that are going on right now, but we're clearly not represented. We haven't been represented. Owners and landlords have not been represented on any of these economic bailouts. It's disgusting, personally.
I agree.
Anybody have a happy question? Nobody. Aaron's got some questions out there, but I don't know if I should talk about them.
Hey, Merrill, what are you drinking?
I am drinking, I'm actually drinking Balvenie 17.
Very
okay?
nice.
Bob, I can't hear you. Maybe he wasn't talking to me. Okay, so what other questions do you have that are not listed as private? Let's see. Ed. City received the PPM loan. Proceeds will be passed through to each property to cover 2 months payroll. Yeah, Ed, that's exactly what we're seeing with ours. So Wayner is supposed to be doing it. This is if you're Dallas or in Texas. Wayner Property Management, Citygate, Devonshire. There may be a couple others that I'm aware of that are all trying to do the same thing with respect to helping out the landlords. I mean, it's interesting. The reality is it's the property management companies that oftentimes we fight with the most that are the ones that are trying to help us out. It kind of puts things in perspective because they have zero obligation whatsoever to apply for a PPP loan. Matter of fact, I hope there are no property managers on here that are part of those groups, but matter of fact, they potentially risk liability by trying to help us. If they screw up the payments, or if people are fired, or it's not accounted properly, that it's actually 2.5 months is the calculation they use. That can be converted over to a loan instead of a forgiveness. So I would personally, it's just the way I do business, I would thank our property management companies that are helping us out because they did go above and beyond. And as someone who has tried to fill these for three companies at the same time, applying for PPP is not a check the box. It's a simple form initially, but then when the lender comes back and asks for all the documentation and back and forth, it's not a simple task. And these property management companies some of them have hundreds of employees. And so I would encourage everybody, to the extent they feel comfortable, of at least reaching out if you haven't already and saying thank you to the property management companies, because right now they're actually the only one on our side. Now, if anybody is a property management company and wants to give me a discount for that call out, let me know. Pen drop. See what other questions there are. You guys are boring today. Bob, are there any issues unique to single family properties? Yeah. Are there issues? Yeah, the downside, Bob, with single family is you can have 10 single families, and if 3 or 4 don't pay, it has a much bigger effect than 7 or 8. That's kind of what we're learning as well. But the reality is the CARES Act has the same effect. If you have a Fannie or Freddie backed loan, you're in the exact same position as everybody else. I have seen a couple clients that have some single family deals that have local lenders, and to be honest with you, their forbearance agreements were very fair. It clearly looked like they wanted to help versus I'm doing this for 3 months and you're dead after that if you do anything wrong. So I'm hoping that single family is being treated better than what I'm seeing. We used to have thousands of single family, and I can't imagine having to deal with, at one particular time, we had, I think, 3,400 properties over 6 cities. I can't imagine having to reach out to every single one of them, trying to figure out what's going on. It's not like an apartment complex where you can go door to door and knock on it with rubber gloves and a face mask. Hey, are you okay? You know, do you want to talk about it? Totally different. I feel really, Bob, I imagine, has some single family. I feel your pain. We dealt with it in, what was the hurricane down in Houston? Harvey. We had that with Harvey. We had 433 homes when Harvey hit Houston. And it's kind of like that, where you can't even get a hold of tenants and you don't know what's going on, and nobody is bailing out. Once again, the owners of properties and insurance companies don't even want to talk to you. But we're in strange times, guys. Hey, one good thing, make sure everybody contacts their automobile insurance company and asks for a discount. Because right now, if you're like me, your cars are pretty much sitting there. It really sucks when gas is around $1 and I can't go fill it up at the gas station because I don't need any gas. But if I can save you some money, and I'm not Geico, but I'm pretty sure 15 minutes will get you some sort of discount with your insurance company right now. This podcast is brought to you by Geico. No, I'm just kidding.
That's pretty funny.
And
yeah, I try to do it funny.
I was gonna say, Allstate already gave me mine without me even asking.
Oh, please, please. How's your airplane?
My airplane's good. Wish I could fly him more.
Yeah. So Erica, you're on. You're not going to go speak? I want everybody to say hello to Erica. Erica, I'm going to have her on her and David on a podcast soon with Infinite Banking. This is not everybody's tooting it. I'm just calling out some people occasionally when I see what they're doing. They actually have a very unique product right now. Some of you may be like me, were you fortunate to liquidate some things right before the market just went to shit, and I'm not even sure what the market does, but they've got some very unique products that allow you to tie up money. This is where I go into the bankruptcy training I have. Tie up money in an insurance product, which is protected from creditors, especially in times like this, but yet you can still borrow against that money you have in there, pay yourself the interest back. It goes back into that account, and you're making money on top of that based on the investments they make. It's like a double interest, protected from creditors.
Creditors.
Yeah, I know I'm putting you on the spot because you were just coming here to get some information because you're an investor as well. But when I see things like that, it's I'm going to say, whether you use anybody's company, insurance is a great asset protection vehicle if you're sitting on cash. It's a life insurance policy that has a cash value. It's a great vehicle because creditors can't touch it. And so I don't make a commission by any means. Eric will probably charge me more when I finish doing my deal with them. But I'm just telling you guys, as a former corporate bankruptcy lawyer and we would have to help the executives try to restructure what they were doing. It's a great vehicle. I've had something like that since 2001. It wasn't as robust as what they produce now, but you can give a shout out to the name of your company.
Infinity Investment Strategies.
How does someone get a hold of you?
I will put my email in the chat. Does that work?
Yeah, perfect. And then I'm only looking on page 1 because I don't know how to get to the rest of my pages, but Jeff King is on. And speaking of insurance.
Did you see my question, by the way, Merrill?
No. Hold on, Jeff. Hold on. I'll get right back to you.
Sorry, Jeff.
I don't have any questions from you, Erica.
Okay, so my question was, does everybody here invest in DFW, or are there people here that have properties in other areas? I'm interested to see, is DFW, how are they holding up payment-wise compared to other areas? Are they doing better or worse? I know that we would expect to see this change, like you said, probably more into May, even into June, but DFW's been pretty strong for a long time. So I'm interested to see if this area is actually holding up better compared to others.
So you should put that in the chat and ask. I can tell you from our experience, DFW does appear to be relatively strong. Now it's going to be based on asset class. You know, typically just demographics, your B and your A class people may have more than 1 month worth of cash to cover their operating expenses, versus C class, some C class, you know, maybe more on a paycheck to paycheck thing. I did a poll on the 6th or 7th, and I think I got about 50 responses, but by the 7th, I think it was the majority were C class, and the majority were in Texas. There were a few outside of Texas, but the range of collected rents was between 60 and 80% by the 6th or 7th. I'm going to do the same thing. I'll do it on Facebook and our Kaliser business page. I'll do it in April also, just to kind of see where it is. I like to go with people that are Facebook friends or clients, because to me those are real numbers. I don't think anybody on here is buying units at $300,000 or $400,000 a door. If they are, they haven't used us. So we kind of want a real sampling of what's going on. You know, in theory, it should be better in May because people are receiving checks, but I'm very pessimistic, and I assume that that is not going to happen. You know, it goes back to the stress test. So, Erica, put it in the chat. Jeff, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Jeff, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Recently, and Cindy, you may have seen this too. I saw this in my mastermind group, actually. One of my mastermind friends just notified us that their insurance premiums, and this is in DFW, went up like 40%. Are you seeing something going on that some of us may not know of yet with respect to insurance rates?
No, we're not. I mean, we have seen increases in the last year that are depending on 10, 20, or 30%, depending. What I have seen is that most of the renewals are renewing with higher deductibles, 1%, 2% of value, where there might have been 25,000 or 50,000 last year. And we're seeing people buy their deductibles down because, for example, if a person has a $10 million property, if they had a $25,000 deductible last year, a 2% deductible is $200,000 plus, which is usually above everybody's budget. So as they buy their deductible down, which is a separate policy, it ends up increasing their insurance cost overall. So that part we've seen. Without that, though, the premiums have not increased to that level, but that may be what happened in that case. The only thing I don't know out there yet, because of this business interruption question that is out there, that, well, as apartment owners, we're feeling that, but picture if you had a restaurant or your business was closed with the state shelter at home, there may be some issues to cover that in insurance. It's still unknown at this point. But if I know there's been some legislative action trying to make that happen. And if it does happen, I think that will tighten the market considerably. We did run into one case, about a month ago or less than a month ago, that a carrier was hesitant to provide business interruption on an apartment complex, just because it's an unknown at this point. But I have not seen I've not seen any rate increase or any change in coverage due to coronavirus at this point, which is a good thing.
Are you still open for business?
Yes, we are. We're all at home except for me, but we're in business.
You want to put your information in the chat box so
people
can see that you're the master of apartment insurance?
You're asking an insurance agent if I'd mind doing that? Sure, I'd be glad.
Yeah, well, it's like asking a lawyer if he'd mind speaking. It's the same thing.
Be glad to help.
Yeah. How about some more questions?
Hey, Merrill, it's Chris.
Chris.
Hey, so question to everyone, and particularly a little bit to you, if you guys have better suggestions. I post the same question on chat. Just want to get everybody's kind of point of view. In a lot of social media posts, right, particularly Facebook, you're seeing tenants now are receiving their checks, but they're going out to buy TVs, video games, everything but paying rent. So has anyone have a strategy or a method to encourage the tenants to pay rent instead of going out just blowing in the air?
Yeah, actually, it's a good question. So I was talking to Bhuvan today, and we came up with a really good idea. So we were going to go to Best Buy and buy some 50-inch flat screens for $199 and tell them that they were costing $1,100 and see if they wanted to buy them from the property management office. That way we would cover our rent with the checks that were just given to them. I was kidding. That was a joke. Chris, that was a joke.
I know.
Yeah. No, I mean, listen, that's unfortunately, I think that's what's going to happen. And I can tell you something that we got that I don't know if a lot of people have gotten. So one of our tenants posted a notice on their door, and then I think on a few other people's door, of this group called GenStrike, GenStrike, that has about 4 million followers around the country. That is I don't even know if it's a non-for-profit, it's some grassroots crap that's out there that is encouraging tenants not to pay their rent right now in support of other tenants that can't afford to pay their rent so that they can stand up to the government. So I'm not going to go through the legalities or the fallacy of not paying your landlord so you can stand up to the government, because those aren't related, because right now the government doesn't give a crap about the landlord. But that is out there, and you guys need to be aware of it. And there's another group that I think has about 13 million followers that is growing as well. And so it's important that you guys are in contact with your property management company and see it. We issued a letter to our tenants, thanking them for being great tenants. Here's a list of resources that you guys can utilize in the event that you don't have capital, or not capital, in the event that you don't have money for rent. Oh, and by the way, this group that says they're protecting you, they're the ones that are going to get you evicted. May not be today, but it'll be later. We didn't quite say it like that. That was my first response. And then luckily Jeff and Bhuvan and a couple others calmed me down, because I was outraged when I saw it. But listen, you hand out free money to people, and unfortunately rent and mortgage is not going to be the first thing on their mind. And also, unfortunately, these grassroots groups have looked at the exact same statutes of the CARES Act and are seeing what's going on, and they're informing them that, hey, the reality is you don't have a job. You're probably not going to get dinged next time you go for an apartment because nobody had a job. So you can probably work your way through this deal and live 5 months free rent. That's the problem. And that goes back to why I'm very concerned about people getting into forbearance agreements without having capital backup, because I can foresee a situation where their economic occupancy is lower than they anticipated while they're trying to pay back their forbearance payments. I hope that, I know that didn't help, Chris. I'm just in the same boat as you are. We're in the same boat.
Yeah. We're seeing some tenants that are kind of saying, hey, the court system shut down, you can't get me out, so middle finger to you. So yeah, we're seeing that.
I mean, they need to understand that they will be evicted, and there will be fees and late fees charged when the time is appropriate. And keep in mind, I don't know how many people this applies to, but to the extent you had tenants that weren't paying rent pre-March 27th, okay? And remember, the CARES Act does not apply to anybody that has a CMBS loan, okay? So if you have a CMBS loan or a bank loan or a community bank that is not a federally backed or insured loan, which there are quite a few out there, you can evict a tenant for non-payment. The reason you can't do it today is because the courts are closed today through shelter-in orders. But that is not going to last nearly as long as September. I can promise you that. So for those, and we have one CMBS loan, we haven't had the issue, but for those of us or those of you guys who have CMBS, or I should say non-federally backed or federally insured loans, it's game on when it comes to evictions, so long as the courts are open. Now, the courts may provide a lot of sympathy for tenants, and they may not rule immediately in your favor, and that I can't help. You never know what a judge is or isn't going to do, unfortunately. I learned that the hard way being a bankruptcy litigator. Depends on what kind of day that person had. But you are not governed by the CARES Act. I just want to make that clear.
Hey, just from an anecdotal perspective to Chris's question, I can just say that going over all the different deals that I'm in, the operator, or the the sponsor of the deal, if they've been pretty communicative with me and they really cared about their tenants and they've tried to do stuff, their rates of payment right now are pretty high. And I know some of them have given free food out, some of them have made other things available to the tenants to show them that they care, and that's really kept the the rent payments high. And I can tell you the ones who haven't had that contact, not so good.
Who was it that just bought 400 pizzas? Did you guys see that? Somebody in
That was Dustin Miles and
Hayden or
Hayden. Yeah, it was Dustin and Hayden.
I thought that was pretty cool that I don't know exactly how many, but it was close to 400 pizzas for 2 of their apartment complexes. They just ordered pizza for every tenant that was there, just to kind of say thank you. Yeah, that's probably it's probably $2,400. But if that $2,400 got them 10 extra rent payments in this scenario, that's not a bad deal. One of the things that you guys can think about, I'm not even close to being an expert on this. We have managed thousands of single family, and we did have to deal with it during Hurricane Harvey with a smaller 430 single family homes. But when people do get assistance, sometimes providing them a little bit of a discount if they pay early, knowing that the check just got into their hands. Yeah, you're discounting your rent, but on the flip side, you're getting your rent. It's like I tell my kids, something is better than nothing. We all want 100%, but we're just we're just in uncharted territory, and we want to have we want to think the best out of everybody. And that just, you gotta think the best, but you gotta prepare for the worst. And as a former bankruptcy lawyer, I always prepare for the worst. I actually assume the worst, and then I'm only surprised by anything decent that happens. Like someone doing pizza, I think that guy's like a saint. But I listened to Madera. Some of you guys on here listen to it too. Listen to their talk as well. They branded face masks that say Madera, and they passed them out to all their tenants. Kind of curious how they were able to get so many face masks with such a shortage, but I'm not going to go there. But they were able to brand face masks and and gloves and get those out to their tenants, in an effort to help. And I think that does build a lot of goodwill with your tenants. And look, the majority of us, most of our tenants don't want to be unemployed; they want to work. A lot of them take pride in their, hopefully all of them take pride in their units. So, I agree. The more we can try to help them and comfort them and understand, a lot of them have lost jobs and some of them haven't received checks. And like from our perspective, our personal perspective, we've received phone calls and talked to all of them, and they're either on payment plans or, we're waiting to see when their checks come in. Some of them are going to take 2 to 3 weeks. But yeah, you're going to see, guys, that in times of adversity, it's going to show you people's true colors, both owners, investors. That's the other thing. Investors, we're dealing with a few of them from some of you guys. This is when you find out who you don't want to have as investors ever again. There's always going to be one or two, and they seem to pop up at the worst times, start questioning everything. Fortunately, we haven't had that on our particular funds. I've been in that position before, but this is going on with quite a few of our clients. We're having to deal with it and trying to help them navigate through it, where they are just harassing the leads or the syndicators now, because they decided not to make a distribution Q1. And most syndicators that chose not to make a distribution Q1, which I think is probably a smart decision, not knowing what Q2 is going to look like, actually protects the investors and prevents from having to go into a forbearance agreement, or prevents from having to do a capital call. But we're seeing some stuff that is just, it's getting personal, it's emotional, it's nasty. So if you're getting it, you're not alone. If it's getting to the point where it's annoying you, contact one of us. We've got these membership interest purchase agreements that we've prepared with full releases and non-disparagement agreements and all sorts of stuff, because they're people that are just being ugly. I mean, they're just being ugly, greedy, trying to take advantage of situations. And, unfortunately, you see this, you see the best of people, and sometimes you see the worst of people in adversity, and you're going to learn the hard way who will not be investing in your next deal. That's the cool thing about being a syndicator. You get to choose who your investors are. There is no law against saying no to somebody. Anybody? I saw someone post they had good collections. And this is also a time, guys, where if people are paying late, it might be a time where you maybe waive late charges, cut them a little break. I'm not telling people how to run their businesses, but little things like that, tiny little things like that during this time, I think will go a long way with some of your tenants. Again, I think the majority of them want to actually pay their rent. I think they actually like living where they are. They want to work and want to pay their rent. I'm running out of scotch. So you guys better ask some more questions. Or
Hey, Merrill, I was just going to say that, during the housing crisis, when we had a bunch of rentals, obviously people were out of work and they had lost their jobs and lost their homes and they couldn't pay. So what we're kind of seeing now is, that everybody pays their rent is, is kind of unusual for me. But what we used to do and what we still do today is if you pay your rent on time, so at the first or before, after 12 months, you get a $100 gift certificate or $100 gift card to wherever you want to go, or usually a Visa or something like that. So it's a small amount of money, but you know what? People will do it.
Yep.
I don't know why, but just that little thing makes them do it.
I mean, you're right. It's the little things. It's unfortunate that this economic, I don't want to say downturn, because it's just a halt, is created by something that prohibits social interaction. Because if it was anything but a virus, we'd still be serving our Starbucks coffee in the leasing office, and people could come by, and when you're talking to people face to face, more positive things happen. But you've lost your job, you're confined to your unit for the most part, and you're waiting on a check, or you're waiting in line to go to a food bank because you haven't gotten a check, and because for the most of us are C-class or B-B owners. The fact is, a vast majority of renters are more paycheck to paycheck, and it sucks for them because they have nobody to even talk to, and even if they want to talk to someone, they really can't. It's a tough situation. It goes back to the con law arguments of whether people are being forcefully detained in their own building, and that's a different amendment. That's cruel and unusual punishment. That could be a whole nother amendment that I can discuss with Brian offline over scotch.
I just wanted to
Before I left, I just wanted to say hi and thank you for doing this. And ultimately, what you just said is really important, that people connection. Unfortunately, we can't meet with the tenants. However, maybe just a little basket of hope you're doing well, or anything that you could do with the mask and gloves, and just knock on a couple of doors if you obviously have the ability to. Most of our passive investments, or any of us that are active, unfortunately do not live near some of our property. So we're totally reliant on our property management company to do some things. But for single family, all I can tell you is that when they call, first you call them, make sure they're doing well. And if they start talking about they're not going to be able to pay your rent, tell them you're going to sell the house. It worked for me. I mean, honestly, and 3 days later, I mean, I didn't charge her. I mean, I called her on the 6th to just say, hey, you know, everything okay with you? Do you need any help? What's going on? And then she started saying, I don't think I can make this month's rent. And I said, you know, I was thinking about that. I don't think I can make this month's mortgage or any other mortgage. If you don't pay, I'm going to put the house on the market. And the good thing is, any house under 200,000, there's international clients looking to park their money because the Australian dollar is tanking. And they still have a little bit more faith in our real estate than their own dollar. So that's exactly what I told her. I said, I'd rather sell the house while somebody's still able to afford it. And she said, can you give me a couple of days and don't charge me late? And I said, no, I'll work with you. I appreciate it. You know, we're all in the same boat. And it worked, because ultimately what you said is absolutely right. They're going to get the money. Look at my kids. I got a monitor today. They'll get on Amazon and they'll be boom, 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 spending. They don't need anything but fingers, and everything will come to the door.
Yeah.
But I gotta go. I really appreciate this. I needed to talk to people, and I stayed the whole time, and I'm happy to see faces and some familiar names. And so thank you for that very much. And we're all investors in the same, I don't know, chaos right now. So a little depressing, but it was good to see everybody. So I'm gonna get off. I gotta get a couple of things else done. Thank you again. Good night.
Seeing you again.
All right, bye-bye.
So Anna, I see you hanging out in the back. You got a ton of units. How's everything looking for you and Raj?
Hey, Merrill. Well, it's good. We are not complaining this month. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think May is going to be the next point of reference that we are looking at, because right now we are well collected. Like across our portfolio, I think we are above 90, pretty much everywhere. So we are okay. So, and I see some very nice ideas that I like here. And I'm kind of thinking that's something that we may implement, but at this point, we were not affected that much. So we are hanging in there. So far, it's good.
That's good. That's awesome. Yeah, May's going to be May's a crapshoot. I wasn't expecting April really to be that bad, because I think most people had enough to probably float April, and some people may not be laid off. I don't know what these shelter-in orders are going to do or not going to do. And the reality is, if people are scared, you can't force them to go back to work. And even these shelter-in orders still tell you to work from home to the extent you can, and they don't open up restaurants such that, you know, the reality is a lot of our tenants are service-based employees. And, you know, we all drive by the restaurants, and it's cool that they have curbside service, but they're making a fraction of what they normally make. They're not even able to pay their rent with that. That's just trying to keep lights on in the restaurant until this changes. And so, you know, this social distancing is not going to change for a while. Hopefully we won't have an uptick in cases. My guess is we will have a little bit, because you're just going to find people that don't abide by it, which I think is something pretty easy to do. And for everybody that, I don't know anybody that needs legal work right now or wants to come by the office, but we're actually opening our offices back up on Monday on a limited basis. To the extent people need to come into work or want to come into work, they can. We're considered a real estate company and an essential business, though I don't know, a lot of you would disagree that a lawyer is essential. But you know, and not that we have that much work. It sounds weird, but we need to see each other. I recommend anybody that's part of a company that's on here or even owns their own property management. It's really good. I'd like to take credit for it, but I don't do it. Jeff in our office makes us do a happy hour once a week. And so we all sit there, it's on Wednesdays, and we hang out for 2 hours. wherever we are, drinking, just cracking each other up, talking about stuff. You guys are probably going to want to see the results of tomorrow's happy hour, because they got the idea of doing this TikTok thing. I'm not even sure what TikTok is, but apparently my wife has got wardrobes for her and I tonight, and we're doing a TikTok video, which probably surprises my entire staff, some of which are on here because I don't play those type of games. But the reason I say that is simply it's kind of depressing having Groundhog Day every single day and not seeing really good news and not being able to interact with the outside world like we used to. But I'd highly recommend happy hours, and don't have some stupid lawyer talking the whole time. Interact, have fun with people. We'll probably make a little 30-second or 60-second video we'll post on Facebook of how stupid the people look at Kaliser and Axiom Title. But we're trying to have some fun with all this shit that's going on. Again, I appreciate everybody coming on board. It sounds like the questions are kind of winding down. People probably have to get home and drive home in traffic. Even though I'm sitting above the tollway, and I can tell you there's zero traffic on the tollway. But I want to thank everybody for listening. I hope that there was some helpful information. I'm glad people participated, and I learned some stuff by people being on here. I will answer questions that were in private on here. There are quite a few of them. We're here if you guys need any help. To the extent there's new stuff going on, we'll do this either next week or the week after. Probably next week, because there'll be all sorts of issues with me not getting my money again from the PPP on Thursday or Friday. So you guys can all calm me down on Tuesday. But anyway, I appreciate it. Thanks everybody for chiming in, and hope you guys have a good week. Cheers.
Thank you, Merrill.
Thanks, Merrill.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.